One of the beliefs I've had for a long time, which I believe is becoming more widespread now, is that Western countries, particularly English-speaking countries, that have racked up enormous amounts of debt are going to have to raise taxes. But not only that, but you have a changing culture where success, wealth, having a high income, having wealth are seen as bad things. Even reliably conservative parts of the United States, for example, are now saying, let's tax the rich some more. And so today I'm going to share with you what I believe are two very important tax trends to be aware of if you are an entrepreneur or an investor in the West. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And to illustrate some of the big tax changes, some of the big things you should be aware of in the years to come, I wanted to share with you a comment that I got that I think summarizes many of my thoughts very, very well. It's from a follower of ours named Tokyo Blender. I think that's not his real name. And he says, you can be sure of two things. Number one, every Tier 1 country will increase taxes on the wealthy. And number two, enact laws to prevent them from fleeing with their accrued wealth. Thanks to a globalizing economy, this has put Western entrepreneurs at a disadvantage. How will you compete with China, who can not only manufacture things, but can also sell them into your country without paying taxes on the income? And what do you think will happen when they figure out how to generate and sell quality services? Trust me, it's coming sooner than you know. And as an entrepreneur, I made the call to get out from under the U.S. tax system this year and executed. It's not worth the risk of being a dinosaur. You don't realize how far behind the curve you are until it's too late. Make the decision now and get moving. Before I talk about the two tax trends that I think you should be aware of that are spoken to in that comment, I want to speak to I think what are perhaps the even more important parts at the end, which is if you're sitting in a country, I don't care if it's the United States, the UK, Australia, or Vanuatu, and you are isolated in that country. You consume the media in that country, you consume the movies, your friends are all from that country. If you're basically isolated and your exposure to the outside world is reading about an election or reading about some kind of market event in the Wall Street Journal, then you are probably not realizing just how many things outside of your country are changing. And the action and the execution that's needed to put in place a successful international plan does not happen overnight. It can be done quickly. You can get second citizenships quickly. You can move overseas for tax purposes quickly. But there's an emotional part of, I'm not comfortable doing that because I've never done it before. Someone who's already lived overseas is a lot easier for me to help than someone who has never left their home country. Now, we help plenty of people who've never left their home country, and we do a great job hand-holding with those people. But you have to be aware that they're probably not going to do everything at once. They're not going to take all the steps or all the tax savings at once. And so getting started before you need something, to me, is the ultimate insurance policy. But here is what I believe will be the two new big tax trends. Number one, you're going to see taxes on income go up. You're going to see taxes on capital gains go up. I think you'll see countries like the United States, which have prioritized, and made it easier for people with capital gains to pay less tax. You will see that change. You will also start to potentially see some kind of tax on wealth. It could be a one-time levy. It could be some kind of ongoing tax. Elizabeth Warren in the U.S. had a plan. People like Bernie Sanders have a plan. And to me, it's not only a matter of if, but when. I think that the thing that I've talked about from day one of Nomad Capitalist that's important to me is culture. Others talk about demographics and many other factors. I've always looked at the culture. What are the people doing? How open are they? What is the visa policy of the country? And if you look at Western countries, they are increasingly saying you need to pay more. And so for certain, I think you're going to see those taxes on income, capital gains, and wealth go up. Step two, as he said, the second big tax trend is you're going to see it more difficult, perhaps physically, as we've seen in 2020, but also financially difficult to leave. A couple years ago, I started talking more about some of the exit taxes that were cropping up around Europe, where they said, listen, if you have wealth and you're going to leave, we're going to take a slice of that wealth before you leave the country. Now, the advantage that people have in Poland, for example, or the Netherlands, or Belgium, is they can leave their country. They can go down to the town hall, or they can, write into the tax authority, whatever the case may be in their country, and they can deregister. They can become a non-resident for tax purposes, and then they can move where they want. Now, one thing we're seeing is we have countries in Europe and elsewhere where if you move to a tax haven, they're going to keep taxing you for a certain number of years. I think those policies could become more prevalent as well. So, for example, if you're a Mexican and you move to a tax haven, they're going to keep taxing you for a while, right? France has for decades had the provision that you can't move to Monaco ever if you're a French citizen unless you were living there, back in the 50s, because they just, don't want you to have access to that easy tax haven right next door. And so I think you could see more policies like that. You want to leave the country, you pay an exit tax. Now, for Americans, if you want to give up your U.S. citizenship, that's the only way to totally be free of all U.S. tax filing and paying obligations. You can move overseas and lower your tax rate dramatically, keep more of your money. But if you want to get out from under all the bureaucracy, all the potential changes, then you have to renounce. And when I talked about the greatest thing that I think I've gained since fully divorcing myself from the U.S. system, it has been peace of mind. It is not that I pay less tax, because as a U.S. citizen, I paid very, very little tax legally while living overseas. It was a bureaucratic mess. I lived in fear, quite frankly, at times. But the greatest thing I have now is peace of mind that no matter what they dream up next, I'll just be over here, a resident and a citizen of countries that I believe want to leave people alone. They're glad that I'm coming and spending money in their country. They're glad that I've contributed enough to become a citizen. Peace of mind, I think, is very important, because you are going to see more countries say, if you want to leave, it's going to cost you. In Elizabeth Warren's ultra-millionaire tax, she said, if you renounce your citizenship and you have $50 million or more, we're going to impose a punitive 40% tax on you. Forget normal capital gains rates, which is what it is under current circumstances, 40% tax. Now, you say, hey, I don't have $50 million. Some of you I know do, because you call me. But if you don't have $50 million, remember how some other taxes started. Remember how the income tax started at 3%. Remember how certain taxes started only applying to certain people, and then it crept and crept and crept and crept closer to where you were. Look at the alternative minimum tax in the United States, and look at how I don't follow it so much anymore, but as I recall, it wasn't indexed to inflation. And so what was a gargantuan number when it was created became something that ensnared millions of people in the United States who weren't even that wealthy into this convoluted tax system. And so these are two trends that I think you're going to see continue. The physical component of making it difficult for you to leave is, oh, you want to renounce your citizenship? Great. All of our embassies are closed. There's a pandemic. How long can they keep that one up? What's the next excuse that they'll have? If you are just starting out in business, if you are young, if you don't have a lot of money yet, I think that's the best time to go overseas before you start accumulating too much and you become a target. If you have just sold a business and you live in one of these countries and you've been fully taxed and you have nothing else to tax, that's another good time to go overseas while they don't have other things they can start tacking on taxes for, because you just already paid your taxes. You sold your business, you paid the capital gains. But before they start raising tax rates, before they start finding new taxes, I think it's a good idea to get out. And if you already have substantial wealth and you're running a successful business, you have successful investments, I think it is a good idea to have a plan B in place, a place where you can go, second citizenship you can rely on. Maybe you own a home overseas, you have some money overseas, legally, of course. We're not trying to hide anything here. But here's the other piece of this argument that is very well pointed out in the comment, which is you think you have an advantage in some cases by being a Western entrepreneur. And people for many years have looked at China and said they produce cheap crap. Remember back 20 years ago when they said Kia and Hyundai produced cheap crap? I remember being in high school and the comedians on the late night talk shows would say, when you fill up your Kia with gas, it doubles in value. And that's not true anymore. The Korean automakers have made tremendous strides in becoming very well accepted around the world. And I think you will see countries like China do that as well. What happens, as the commenter points out, when they learn to create quality services? Because they've already been there. they're already really making strides in doing that, which is why you've seen a lot of stuff that used to be sent to China going to Vietnam, going to Bangladesh, going back to places in Latin America like Peru, for example, because China has moved itself up in the value chain. And so just as Hyundai can spin off a luxury car brand and create $50,000 SUVs, China can do the same. And I think the advantage that people in the West think that they have is going to go away because they know how to use more favorable tax regimes. I'm always interested whenever I get emails, sales emails from companies that maybe I've done business with before, and I look at the very bottom of the email and I see the companies where their address on the email for canned spam purposes is in Cyprus or in Malta or it's in the Cayman Islands. I bought something the other day, it showed up on my credit card, Grand Cayman. I said, that's tremendous. And so if you are staying in your high tax country, you are at a disadvantage to the guy who's running his company out of Malta and he's living in a tax friendly place. You are at a disadvantage to someone who's figured out these opportunities. And so you may have a harder time growing your wealth in the future because you are at a disadvantage. In addition to the fact that your country is not only putting you at a disadvantage with all of their crazy policies, but now they're going to come and say, give us a portion of what you already have. Whatever you're making, we're going to take more. So you've got things basically going in the opposite direction, where it's getting worse on both ends. It's harder and harder for you to compete domestically, and if you want to operate internationally, you've got so many more competitors there as well. Those are the trends that I think you should be aware of, because countries in the West are broke, and you've got countries in other parts of the world that want to welcome business with 0%, 1%, 1.5%, 3%, 5% tax rates. They just want you there. And if you take advantage, then you can go where you're treated best. If you don't, it's going to become harder and harder, and the government is going to come and try and pick, I believe, whatever is left off the bones. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.